Yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court provided a partial victory to an effort in Arizona to enforce proof of citizenship for voting. The court declined, however, to allow elements of the law that requires voters to document their U.S. citizenship to vote in this year's presidential election. Now, in practice, proof of citizenship will be required for new voters in some circumstances. Joining me now to discuss what this means for November is Ken Klukowski, a former senior counsel in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice and a former special counsel in the White House's Office of Management and Budget. He has also litigated constitutional cases up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Ken, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. This is a bit complicated and convoluted, but really important. What exactly does this case mean for Arizona?
It does get into the legal weeds a little bit, and that is we have to go back a ways. It's Arizona in 2004 passed a law saying that you had to present proof of citizenship to participate in an election. Now, there's a federal law that allows a federal agency, the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, to also have a federal form that people in any state can use to register. So in every state, you both have your normal voter registration form, which is always set up, by state law. And then you also have this federal option, this federal form. And so and Arizona was requiring proof of citizenship for everyone in the state, no matter which form they were using. That got challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in 2013, the court held that because federal law allows for this federal form, that only the federal government can set requirements for that. So if you're using the federal form in Arizona, you don't need proof of citizenship. But if you're using the normal form, the state form, then yes, the state could require it. So that was the state of the law from 2013. Then in 2022, the Arizona legislature passed a new law, an election integrity law. And, we've seen a lot of those in the country in 2021, 2022. For that matter, I do a lot of election integrity work with your own Ken Blackwell. Who does great work there at FRC. He and I do a lot in the election integrity space together. And in this 22 law that Arizona passed, it says that you also need to present proof of citizenship if you want to participate in a presidential election in that state, or if you want to participate in mail-in voting, if you want an early ballot during these huge and growing windows of early voting that we see in so many places around the country. And so that got challenged again by those on the left. And so you had a trial judge, a federal trial judge in Arizona, who issued an injunction against all this. So that goes up to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. But while that appeal is ongoing, of course, we have an election right around the corner. And so the Republican National Committee, the RNC, sought a stay of the lower court injunction so that these laws could at least be in effect for the 2024 election. And that request for a stay ended up going all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is where we get the split decision. And that is that 3 justices, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Neil Gorsuch, voted in favor of granting a stay for Arizona on all of these counts, on all 3 of these issues. 4 of the justices, the 3 liberal justices, plus Justice Amy Coney Barrett, voted to allow all of this to be blocked. And then 2 justices in the middle, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, voted to say, okay, yes, you can still require proof of citizenship to register if it's the state form, but you cannot allow it. They allowed the injunction to continue when it comes to presidential elections and to early voting. So this was a partial victory and a partial defeat for those working for election integrity in this election.
Well, Ken, there is a lot there, but practically speaking, when you go to vote, you don't get a federal ballot and a state ballot. So does this mean that there is a way to get the ballot, the only ballot that a person can get without citizenship if you go through door number 1, and you can get it, but you would be required to show proof of citizenship if you go through door number 2? Is that practically how this works?
Well, if the stay had gone a different way, you would be looking at options like that. As it was, there were 6 votes to block the requirement for presidential elections. And so in the 2024 election, no one in Arizona needs to show any proof of citizenship. Now, the law, it would be allowed under the law. If you had an instance where federal law requires certain things when it comes to federal elections, that does allow the option of a state to take on the task. It would be enormously expensive, but they could set up a parallel election system just for state and local elections. As a practical matter, everyone does it on one unified ballot to avoid voter confusion, and also because it's a huge logistical task, and there's a big price tag on it. But in this case, where 6 justices voted to block that provision of Arizona law, or to be more precise, they let the lower courts block to continue while the appeal is ongoing. Each of the justices could still vote a different way when this appeal finally reaches them on the merits, which I would guess would probably happen in late 2025 or early 2026. But for purposes of the 2024 election right around the corner, no one is going to need to present proof of citizenship. They only have to do it when they're registering to vote. They would not have to do it in order to cast a ballot or get a mail-in ballot for early voting.
Ken, we're almost out of time here in a few seconds. This matters because Arizona is a swing state. Is there any way to know how many people might be voting without having proven their citizenship? 15 seconds?
No. There are a couple ways that could help. I mean, you've got the federal SAVE database, and you've got the Social Security number verification system. There are federal resources that you could use for that. But like we just saw a couple weeks ago, where Governor Glenn Youngkin discovered over 6,000 non-citizens on the voter rolls in Virginia, that shows in an election where outcomes can be decided by hundreds or thousands of votes, sometimes even
it can make a difference. Ken, we're out of time, unfortunately. Up against a break. Thank you for being with us today so much.
Thanks for having me. God bless.